November 7, 1989, Flight MH192 of Malaysian Airlines took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport. It was heading to Kathmandu with 167 passengers and 11 crew members on board. The captain of the aircraft was 47-year-old Rajiv Chandra, a highly experienced pilot with 15,000 flight hours, including more than 2,000 hours in the Himalayan region. The co-pilot was 36-year-old Li Wei, a skilled aviator who had joined civil aviation after 8 years of service in the Malaysian Air Force. That day, one of the strongest storms of the decade was raging over the Himalayas. Meteorologists recorded wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour and a sharp drop in pressure. The air temperature at an altitude of 23,000 feet was a brutal minus 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite the extremely difficult weather conditions, Flight MH192 was cleared for takeoff, as forecasts predicted that the weather would improve by the time the plane reached the Himalayas. The last radio contact with the aircraft occurred at 1843 local time. Captain Chandra reported entering an area of turbulence and requested permission to change altitude. Control, this is MH192, entering severe turbulence. Requesting descent to 25,000, the transmission was cut off mid-sentence. The plane disappeared from radar as if it had vanished into thin air between the mountain peaks. A search operation began immediately, but it was made difficult by the terrible weather. 8 helicopters and 12 ground teams combed the presumed crash area for 3 weeks. The search yielded no results. In one of the most remote parts of the Himalayas, where the peaks rise above 23,000 feet, the plane seemed to have disappeared completely. After a month, the authorities of Nepal officially ended the search operation, declaring all passengers and crew members dead. Among the 167 passengers were tourists from 14 countries, a group of Buddhist monks traveling for an annual pilgrimage, and the famous Himalayan climber Johann Steiner, with a team of 5 people. For the families of the missing, years of painful uncertainty and hopeless waiting followed. For 34 years, the mystery of Flight MH192 remained unsolved, until in June 2023, an international mountaineering expedition led by Alex McKenzie set out to climb the eastern slope of Mount Kanchenjunga, the 3rd highest peak in the world. The group included 5 people. McKenzie himself, a 46-year-old Scotsman with 20 years of experience climbing in the Himalayas, Anna Sokolova, a 38-year-old Kazakh mountaineer who had climbed all of the 7 summits world's 26,000-foot peaks, James Hope, an Australian doctor and mountaineer, Minho Park, a South Korean photographer and expert in high-altitude filming, and Chiring Sherpa, a 3rd-generation Nepali mountain guide. The expedition had originally planned to try a new route on the eastern slope of Kanchenjunga, which was considered nearly impossible to pass due to steep, icy walls and frequent avalanches. All 6 previous attempts to open a route through this section had failed. 4 climbers had died over the years trying to conquer it. Local residents called this part of the mountain Korlo Lahamo, the wheel of the goddess of death in the Tibetan dialect. According to an ancient legend, the mountain goddess hid a gateway to the other world here, where the souls of the dead would go. At an altitude of about 19,000 feet, the climbers encountered strange phenomena. Their electronic compasses began showing odd readings, as if something in the mountain was distorting the magnetic field. GPS devices would sometimes lose signal, even though the sky was perfectly clear. The team assumed this was caused by the type of rock, possibly a high content of iron or other metals. At sunrise on the 3rd day of the climb, while the group was camped on a narrow ledge at 20,300 feet, Anna was the first to notice the unusual behavior of birds. A large flock of Himalayan vultures, rare in that area, was circling in thermal currents over a steep slope half a mile from the camp. Among them were 2 birds that stood out because of their size, Himalayan eagles with wingspans of up to 10 feet. What was strange was not just the presence of the predatory birds at such a height, but the odd way they flew. The eagles seemed to draw the same shape in the air again and again, returning to a specific point on the slope, as if trying to get the climbers' attention. Upon seeing the birds, Chiring Sherpa turned pale and flatly refused to continue the climb along the planned route. At first, he gave vague answers to the concerned climbers, but then he shared a local legend. His grandfather had told him that Ram Trulma lived on this mountain, guardian mountain spirits that took the form of great birds and protected places where the worlds of the living and the dead intersected. When the Ramtrolma circled over a particular spot, it meant they were guarding souls trapped between worlds. Despite being skeptical, Mackenzie became interested in the eagle's strange behavior. This kind of flight pattern was typical for birds of prey when they spotted large prey. The team decided to change their route and investigate what had drawn the bird's attention. In the worst-case scenario, they would only lose a couple of hours. The new route led the climbers to a steep, icy slope ending in a drop-off. As they approached the spot over which the eagles had been circling, the birds began to behave even more oddly. They flew down almost to head level and then soared upward again, as if trying to point the way. Suddenly, one of the eagles dove down and slammed into the snow just 100 feet from the group. When the climbers came closer, the bird took off, but a deep hole remained in the snow. Minho Park pulled out his ice axe and started clearing the snow. At about 3 feet deep, the blade struck something hard with a metallic sound. 15 minutes later, they uncovered a piece of white fuselage with a blue and red stripe, the distinctive colors of Malaysian Airlines. The climbers could not believe their eyes. In front of them were the wreckage of a passenger plane at an altitude of over 20,000 feet, in a place that had previously been considered unreachable, even for experienced mountaineers. Their first thought was to call for rescuers immediately, but satellite communication suddenly failed. All the devices showed fully charged batteries, but there was no signal. The team decided to keep digging to understand the scale of what they had found. For the next 4 hours, the group worked on clearing the snow around the discovered part of the fuselage. By evening, they had uncovered a section of the aircraft with 4 windows and the lettering on the side, MH192. It was the very Malaysian flight that had vanished without a trace 34 years earlier. Now it was clear why it had never been found. It had crashed in a location considered completely inaccessible. No helicopter could have hovered at that altitude due to the thin air, and no ground team would have ever gone up that slope, as it didn't lead to any known summit. The next morning, after a tense night spent beside the wreckage, the climbers continued their excavation. By noon, they discovered a break in the fuselage, wide enough for a person to crawl inside. Alex Mackenzie and Anna Sokolova, as the most experienced in the group, decided to go in while the others kept clearing snow outside. Inside the aircraft, it felt as if time had stopped. Oxygen masks hung from the ceiling, half-covered cups still sat on tray tables. A copy of Time magazine lay open in the aisle, featuring a photo of the Berlin Wall on the cover, just days before it fell. The climbers moved cautiously, afraid to disturb the fragile balance of the wreckage. In the first row of the passenger cabin, they found a bag containing mountaineering gear. Inside was an ice axe engraved with the initials JS, those of Johann Steiner, the famous climber who had been on board. Nearby lay his passport and a leather-bound notebook that had been astonishingly well preserved. When Mackenzie opened the notebook, a chill ran down his spine. It was a journal Steiner had kept after the crash. The last entry was dated December 16, 1989, more than a month after the plane had gone missing. Johann Steiner's journal revealed a horrifying story of survival. Of the 178 people on board, only 47 made it through the first night. Most had died on impact when the plane hit the mountain slope during a snowstorm. Captain Chandra was among the survivors and took charge. He built a temporary shelter from pieces of the fuselage, distributed the available food supplies, and enforced strict water rationing. Steiner wrote that the plane crashed into the mountain because of a strange magnetic anomaly. All the instruments failed at the same time. The pilots were flying completely blind. A few minutes before the impact, the captain saw a strange glow on the mountain slope, as if the mountain itself was glowing from within. He tried to turn away, but it was too late. The following entries described a fight for survival in extreme conditions. At night, temperatures dropped to -49 degrees Fahrenheit. On the 5th day after the crash, the survivors noticed strange behavior from the birds. Huge eagles began circling above the crash site. On the 7th day, something incredible happened. One of the eagles dropped a mountain goat near the shelter. The animal was dead but still warm. At first, the survivors thought it was just a coincidence, but the next day the bird returned with another carcass. It seemed that the eagles were deliberately feeding the people. Captain Chandra claimed that in 20 years of flying over the Himalayas, he had never heard of anything like this. The Eagles continued to bring food to the survivors for the next 2 weeks. This saved them from certain starvation. By the end of November, however, the conditions worsened dramatically. A heavy snowfall completely buried the plane wreckage, turning it into an icy tomb. Their oxygen supplies were running low, and many survivors were suffering from severe altitude sickness. The entry from December 4th stated that 3 more people died that day. Only 18 remained. Captain Chandra said they needed to go down, or everyone would die. He suggested digging a tunnel through the snow to get out. The Eagles were still circling over the plane every day. Sometimes, Steiner felt as if they were trying to tell the people something. The final entry in the journal was short and troubling. "We dug a tunnel, made it outside. The captain says we must go down the southeast slope. The Eagles are gone for some reason. Last night, I saw that strange light on the cliffs again. It pulses like a living heart. The local monks in our group say it's the light of passage, a path to another dimension. I don't know whether to believe them, but I have no other explanation. If someone finds this journal, know that we fought until the end and never gave up." The climbers were stunned. It turned out that some passengers had survived the crash and tried to descend the mountain. But what happened to them after that? Why were they never found? And what role did the Eagles play in all of this? Continuing their exploration of the plane, the climbers found another journal in the cockpit, the flight log. Captain Chandra had continued writing in it until the very end, recording all the strange things that happened. On November 28th, he wrote that the compass was still going crazy. The needle spun non-stop, sometimes counterclockwise. All electronic devices that they managed to power with the emergency generator showed nonsense. The altimeter dropped into the negatives and showed minus 6,600 feet, even though they were clearly at an altitude of at least 20,000. The thermometer jumped from 95 degrees Fahrenheit to negative 76 degrees Fahrenheit without any logic. At night, the radio operator tried to activate the emergency transmitter and swore he heard voices speaking an unknown language through the headphones. It was as if this place distorted reality. In one of his last entries, the captain described a strange event he witnessed with the surviving monks. The previous night, the glow had appeared again on the slope. The monks performed a kind of ritual and chanted mantras. They said it was a gateway between worlds, and that those who passed through it would be given a new life in another dimension. As a man of science, the captain didn't believe in such things, but after everything they had endured, he was ready to consider any possibility. If they couldn't descend, maybe it was worth the risk to find out what lay behind that light. By evening that same day, the climbers found something even more astonishing in the tail section of the plane. The emergency exit had been opened from the inside, and around it, dozens of bird feathers lay scattered on the floor. Some of them belonged to Himalayan eagles, confirmed by Minho Park, who had a passion for ornithology. The feathers were arranged in a strange pattern, resembling a spiral. At the center of the spiral lay a small metal object. It turned out to be an old Tibetan amulet with the image of a winged creature. Later, Shearing explained that it was the symbol of the Ram Trulma, guardian spirits that take the form of giant birds. As the climbers continued clearing snow outside, they discovered tracks leading away from the plane down the slope, remnants of the tunnel mentioned in Steiner's journal. The tunnel led to the edge of a cliff and then suddenly ended. Beyond that point was a sheer ice wall over 1,600 feet high. Descending it without specialized gear would have been impossible. It was impossible to understand what had happened to the survivors. If they had gone that way, they would have surely fallen and died. But if that were the case, their bodies should have been found below. Yet there were no traces at all. That evening, when the team returned to the aircraft to spend the night inside the fuselage for shelter from the wind, something unexplainable happened. James Hope's satellite phone, which hadn't worked all day, suddenly came to life and started making strange sounds. It wasn't normal communication. It was more like a series of short and long beeps, similar to Morse code. Hope recorded the sequence, and when the group returned to base camp, one of the assistants, a former radio operator, decoded it. The message read, "We are alive, but not here." That night, the climbers saw the very same glow described by Captain Chandra and Johann Steiner. It appeared on a cliff about 1,000 feet from the aircraft, a pulsating bluish light resembling the northern lights but focused in a single spot. The light moved in a spiral, swirling inward. The strangest part was that when they pointed their flashlights at it, the beams of light bent, as if the space around that spot was distorted. On the final morning, as the climbers were preparing to leave the crash site to descend and report their discovery to the authorities, they saw the eagles one last time. The birds surrounded them, forming a living ring in the air. One of the eagles carried something in its claws. It dove and dropped the object at Alex Mackenzie's feet. It was a worn leather wallet. Inside was the ID card of Captain Rajiv Chandra and a photograph of his family. On the back of the photo was a handwritten note, "Pass through the light. New life. Do not search for us here." The date on the note was December 17, 1989, the day after the final entry in Steiner's journal. 3 days later, the climbers reached base camp and contacted the Nepalese authorities. Within a month, a large-scale expedition was organized to the crash site, involving rescuers, researchers, and representatives of Malaysian Airlines. They confirmed all of Mackenzie's team's findings, but were unable to make further progress in solving the mystery of the missing survivors. The strangeness continued even during the official expedition. All electronic equipment malfunctioned near the aircraft. Compasses gave random readings. GPS devices showed locations with errors of several miles. Meteorologists recorded an unusually high level of electromagnetic radiation around the crash site, but couldn't explain its source. Geologists discovered that the rock beneath the plane contained an unusually high concentration of rare earth metals, including gadolinium and neodymium, both known for their strong magnetic properties. However, these anomalies didn't explain the glowing phenomenon or the bizarre behavior of the eagles. The black box, found among the wreckage, revealed that shortly before the crash, the aircraft entered an area of intense electromagnetic disturbance. All instruments failed simultaneously, and communication was lost. The last words of the captain, recorded by the flight data recorder, were, "What is that light? It's right in front of us. Pull the yoke. The recording cut off mid-sentence. Local residents from the nearby village of Khumbu told investigators that Mount Kanchenjunga had always been considered sacred and dangerous in their folklore. According to legend, on its eastern slope there exists a door between worlds, guarded by spirit protectors in the form of giant birds. Those who find this door at the moment it opens may cross into another dimension, where there is no suffering or death. Even more surprisingly, the village elders claim that about a month after the plane's disappearance, strange people began appearing in nearby villages. Not exactly locals, but not complete outsiders either. They spoke Nepali with a strong accent, had unusual appearances, and possessed strange knowledge. These people lived in the villages for several weeks and then disappeared, saying they were setting off on a long journey to the east. DNA analysis of the feathers found inside the plane revealed astonishing results. While most of them belonged to Himalayan eagles, some samples contained genetic markers that did not match any known bird species. Scientists suggested that this could be a previously unknown population of predatory birds, adapted to life at extreme altitudes. The most remarkable discovery was found among Captain Chandra's personal belongings. In the pocket of his uniform jacket, a neatly folded sheet of paper was found with a detailed drawing of a spiral-shaped portal and complex mathematical calculations describing its properties. Physicists who examined the notes were stunned. The equations outlined a theoretical model of a space-time tunnel, or wormhole, using the language of modern quantum physics. These kinds of concepts only began to be actively developed by scientists in the 2010s, 20 years after the crash. The mystery of Flight MH192 remains unsolved to this day. The official investigation concluded that the plane crashed due to a combination of extreme weather conditions and a failure of navigation systems caused by a natural geomagnetic anomaly. The fate of the survivors who left the aircraft on December 16, 1989, is still unknown. No bodies were ever found, neither on the mountain slopes nor beneath the cliff where the snow tunnel led. Alex Mackenzie and his team gained international recognition after their discovery. They continued to investigate the mystery of Flight MH192, collecting testimonies and studying archives. Mackenzie visited the families of several passengers, including the widow of Captain Chandra. She revealed that a week before his final flight, her husband had told her about a strange dream. He dreamed that he was flying through a tunnel of bright light, accompanied on either side by giant birds with human eyes. At the end of the tunnel, he saw another world, beautiful and peaceful. When he woke up, he said, "If something happens to me, know that I won't die. I'll just go somewhere else." A year after the crash site was discovered, Minho Park published a photo book titled Wings Over the Abyss, dedicated to the expedition. In one of the photos taken on the last day at the aircraft, something unexplained was captured. Against the blue sky above the wreckage, a massive eagle was soaring, but when the image was zoomed in, its shadow on the snow had distinctly human features. Scientists continue to study the magnetic anomaly in the crash area. Every year, eagles return to the site, as if guarding it from outsiders. Local villagers no longer call the eastern slope of Kanchenjunga the Wheel of the Goddess of Death, but instead the Path of Birds. They say that on clear days, strange shimmering lights can be seen from the summit, as if a door between worlds is opening. In villages at the foot of Kanchenjunga, there are stories of wanderers who appear every few years as if from nowhere. They don't speak about their past, but they can predict the weather with astonishing accuracy and possess remarkable knowledge about the mountains. People often notice unusual amulets in their hands, metal spirals resembling the one found by the climbers inside the plane. Recently, Alex Mackenzie received a strange package with no return address. Inside was a small silver pendant in the shape of an eagle with outstretched wings. On the back, a single phrase was engraved: "The path is open to those who believe." Find us at sunrise. Captain Chandra's widow claims that she has seen her husband in her dreams several times over the years. He always says the same thing: "I'm alive, but not here. The place where we are now is beautiful. Don't be sad for me." The mystery of Flight MH192 continues to fascinate scientists and explorers. Was it a rare natural event, a manifestation of quantum physics, or truly a magnetic anomaly of unimaginable power? Perhaps we will never know the full truth. As one local monk said, "Some secrets of the mountains are not meant to be solved, only to remind us of the limits of human understanding."